Hi chums. It's a horrible day outside. I don't know if you can see that actually. I'm trying to see it through a lens, but the light's working against me. The temperature in here is a very pleasant 17 degrees, about 64 degrees Fahrenheit. You might wonder why I've got a piece of white paper stuck in the back of that thermometer. It's because it's green and the thermometer is red, and I can't see the red against the green, so I put a piece of paper in behind. But it's horrible outside at the moment. Now, I mentioned tomatoes in the last video, and just two points I've thought of. I was watching, before I came out here, I had my lunch, and I was watching the video that Dale made of his new polytunnel, which is super. As Dale Calder, I'll put a link into his down below, but most of you know it already. And he was mentioning his tomatoes. Now, as you can see, my tomatoes are looking pretty good. You know, there's a big long trusses there. I'm going to move this pepper and try and get in there just to show you how luxuriant those are. Aren't they pretty good, aren't they? And we've got some over here, they're good. My problem is blight, look. My problem is blight. And it means that I'm denuding my plants to try and keep the blight away from the fruit, because it kind of just makes the fruit die, basically. So these tomatoes here, those are Gardener's Delights as well, and as you can see, I'm stripping the leaves off these as well. This is pretty. Get the tripod out of the way. There's another Gardener's Delight there. Those are pretty good. Now, those are very tasty tomatoes, and they're unlike other Gardener's Delights I've grown this year in particular. It seems I hadn't noticed this before, but in the skin is quite, not the skin, but the flesh under the skin is quite thick, almost like a beefed or a paste tomato, like one of these ones here, these type here, the Luciola. I'm convinced those are a sauce tomato because there's very few seeds in them, and they're really beefy, thicky, fleshy. So, and the Gardener's Delights are a bit like that this year, which isn't bad. But I mentioned in the last video, the potato video, that there was something unusual about the tomatoes, and this is it. Now, those are my tomatoes. They're doing fine. I'm very pleased with them. Well, I'm not very pleased with them. Those ones there, Sweet Million, basically a dead loss. They're all right, just, you know. Mascota, big mistake. Now, I told you lies about these. I told you those were supposed to be in a hanging basket, but they're not. They're an indeterminate bush variety which needs to be pruned from the start. I didn't prune it from the start. That's why this one behind here is all leggy all over the place, right? And I thought when I saw this sort of aspect of the big long runners vines coming out, I thought this was the hanging down business, but it's not. They're a bush tomato. I don't know where I picked up the hanging basket thing from, but I definitely read it somewhere, but that's not right. They're actually a bush. So I apologize for any sort of confusion I caused there. But I'm going to look for a hanging basket variety to try and utilize the space up above here during the summer next year. Might as well maximize the area. So, back to this tomato thing. The very best tomatoes I'm getting this year are coming off this pathetic specimen here. Now, the story behind this guy is he was in a pot. Nobody wanted him. I hadn't the courage to throw him out because, once again, it's like murdering your own children when you try and get rid of little plants. So I stuck him or her into that pot and said, look, you can take your chances. Those are the most beautiful little tomatoes I've ever tasted. And this comes back to the theory about feeding plants, that if you keep feeding your tomatoes when they're about to ripen, they'll not bother ripening. They'll just keep putting out more fruit and more leaves. But if you stop feeding them, it makes them, basically, they sense they're going to die because there's no food and no nutrients, so they start pushing the fruit start ripening the fruit much more quickly. This thing here has just been sitting in that pot. All it's got has been water. It's not even in the warm part of the sunny part of the greenhouse. It's just sort of down the back here behind the cucumbers. And those little tomatoes there, now they're not very big, but boy, are they sweet and beautiful, and the skins and the flesh underneath are quite thin, unlike the ones up above, and these are far more juicy. So next year I'm going to run an experiment where I do my tomatoes, and I'm going to use the John Innes mix that I normally use in one lot, but I'm not going to add the cow manure to it. See, the mix I use for tomatoes is the same as I use for potatoes. And as you can see, you get really lovely, luxuriant growth in the tomatoes and lots of tomatoes. But next year I'm going to use the John Innes medium, and I'm going to go and buy the cheapest compost I can buy, potting compost, and run that alongside. And the only similarity between the two will be that I will feed them according to the instructions on tomato food boxes, like once a week when they start setting fruit or whatever it is. I don't feed these ones at all because I think they've got enough nutrients in the pots before when they're planted. So I think that maybe they get a wee bit of grow more. No, they don't. They don't get anything. They get the cow manure, composted cow manure, and the John Innes compost, which is a very robust mix. So next year I'm going to try using really cheap compost and some tomato food, because if I get less tomatoes that taste like these boys down here, I'd be more than happy, because these are nice, but they're nothing like the ones down below. Where am I at here? 6 minutes. I don't like going over the 5 now, but something else I'm not going to grow again is, where are we at? Sweet peppers. Okay. Now, this guy here looks alright, but if we cut him open, just go down here and cut him open to let you see. I'm not wasting food doing this, folks, and you'll see why in a few seconds. I have to try and get into my right hand pocket to get my knife. Right, I've got her here. Sorry about the camera work, I'm trying to get my knife opened here. Okay, what do we see? Just slice through that. And as you can see, I slice through, of course I sliced through part of the membrane, but as you can see there, I give a bit of a clean on my trousers. The flesh is very, very thin, and it's as bitter as gall. If you can think of a really bitter thing, that's exactly what this tastes like. And it's also, to add to that, it's like the texture of plastic. Really not good. So sweet peppers, pointless trying to grow them here, I think. I've tried them in here, I've tried them outside, I've tried different mixes, and none of them have done. Japanese peppers, just while I'm on it, I'm still getting flowers in the Japanese peppers, but I'm not getting them. Oh, here we go. Look at that there. Look, you see in here? If I can just point the camera there, at the end of my finger, tiny little pepper. There's another one behind it, and another one in front of that. So maybe I'm going to get some Japanese peppers, and I'll keep some for seed for next year. The cucumbers, might as well just do the rest. The cucumbers are still doing their bit. Look at the size of that monster now. And they're still doing their bit. And I also stripped the leaves off these at the bottom, because they're basically they just go white and start melting away. So there's no point leaving them there for disease and stuff. So all in all, I'm happy enough. But I thought it was interesting that the tomato that got treated worst in the greenhouse is making the best tomatoes. So there you go, folks. All the best now. Bye bye.